Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Monday, April 1st. We are here live. That's not an April Fool's joke. It's for real. Almost 2 weeks off. I snuck in a Friday show. I'm back, somewhat recovered. We got a lot to talk about today, and we're going to get right to it. We are going to open up the phone lines right now. If you want to join us, start dialing. Either hit that call now button on your app or dial 319-527-6791. I've got Brent Hutto from truckstop.com joining me this morning. Brent, good morning.
Well, Mr. Rutherford, I am happy to hear that you are feeling better. And I'm joining you live from the Midway Airport in Chicago, Illinois.
I think I was just there recently. I can't believe you're in an airport again.
Well, that's my life, man. I mean, hey, truckers drive on the road. I fly on the plane. But no, hey, it's good to be going.
Well, I was going to say, you know what you got to do? You got to start keeping track of your mileage. You might be beating these guys.
You know, you never know. I do fly a lot of thousands and thousands of miles. Now, it's cool to be in Chicago. And I didn't know this until I got in logistics, Kevin, that Chicago is the logistics hub for America. And I'm like, why is it the logistics hub for America? Well, it's because back when America was being founded as a country, Chicago was the westernmost big city when we were expanding the railroads. And so all the rail hubs in America meet in Chicago. And so it's a great city to be in. I'm just a temporary person here because I'm going somewhere with my son Brink. I'm taking him on a college visit, which is a lot of fun to do as a dad.
Nice.
And having fun, having a nice little layover here in the Midwest.
So one of the things I remember seeing pictures of, and I don't know a lot about this, was like the stockyards, like all the cattle and animals and all that moved through Chicago.
Oh yeah, I mean this place was so popular. I mean they had a World's Fair here at the turn of the century. So it was such a hot place for people to be able to come into. And by the way, I know when we say World's Fair, we're like, I mean, to the modern day, like World Fair, why is that important? Well, that used to be like the biggest thing. I mean, it literally was the World's Fair, and it's kind of like the modern Olympics, where they brought the entire world came to one city. So, the Stockyard's a really cool place. I mean, obviously Chicago's a big city, and I've always enjoyed it. It's probably one of my favorite big cities because the people of Chicago are just great.
Whatever happened to the World's Fair?
Yeah. Hey, you got me. I don't know.
That'd be interesting to know.
I think it just became. Yeah, well, I'll ask my son Brink. He'll know because he studies that sort of stuff, and he's a big historian on lots of things. And if I have a question about history, I just ask Brink.
Yeah,
that's my son. That's one of my 18 days. You know him, and so lots of fun.
There's all kinds of interesting stories. Isn't that where like the ice cream cone was first invented? And if I remember the story right, the ice cream vendor ran out of cups or spoons or something, and right next to him was a waffle maker, and the waffle maker rolled up a waffle and they stuck ice cream in it, and that was the ice cream cone. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, I don't know much about that one. I do know that Wrigley's Gum is based out of Chicago, so that's where Wrigley Field, where the Cubs play, is based on. There's a big building downtown that says Wrigley's on it. So I do know that it's maybe the gum capital of the world. But no, there's lots of in the modern trucking world. There's lots of logistics companies here. Obviously, just north of Chicago, up in Wisconsin, you've got Schneider. You've got there's lots of other large fleets that are here inside of the greater sort of Illinois, Wisconsin areas, but no, it's kind of hard. Part of what we all know is the heart of America, sort of places. You got moving into like the Midwest and Arkansas and places like that. So Missouri. So, but that middle part of America.
Yeah.
But no, it's really cool. I just enjoy studying it, man. The more I study it, the more fascinated I am about freight and logistics and how things move. And it's probably why I really just enjoy what I do so much and getting to talk to you about all the sort of like the facts and ins and outs of moving freight. It's just, to me, it's the most fascinating thing in the world. I love it.
Yeah, I do too. The elites on the two coasts call that all flyover country.
I know they do. Well, let them keep flying over if that's what they want to do.
I know.
We love where we are.
Yeah, we don't need them on the road anyway. They'd just be in our way.
That's very true. Well, look, hey, I'm glad you're feeling better, man. Tell you what, I was worried about my brother after Mid America. We had a great Mid America, man. What a fun few days it was. But I know the post of Mid America was not your favorite moment.
Well, I didn't even make it all the way through the show. I missed Saturday completely. No? I woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, and knew there was no way I was getting out of bed. I ended up sleeping like, I think I calculated the Monday through Friday, I was running on like 11 or 12 hours of total sleep. I was averaging like less
you certainly
than...
was suffering, man. I remember that,
less than 3 hours a night. And the crazy thing was it wasn't affecting me during the day. I had all kinds of energy. I felt great.
100%. Yeah.
And then I kept thinking, I wonder how long the human body can go like this. And I found out. I woke up really sick. And then I spent between Saturday and Monday, I think I slept like 35 hours and didn't really get out of bed much at all. I'm still not completely recovered. I mean, I still don't feel totally up to normal. So I actually think I've got something going on. I talked to Jack, Dr. Wolfson. When I'm down in Arizona, what do we got? A week or so before we got to be down there.
Next week.
Next week.
Get ready.
His office is down there, so I'm going to do a full workup.
Okay.
I've got a...
Oh, good. You should.
Yeah. He's... after talking to him, he is really believing I've probably been exposed to some sort of mold toxin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
we were in a... Yeah.
Well, I've been sick 3 times since last October on my trip. And that's more than I've been sick in the last 10 years plus. And it's very possible that the coach has mold. They're always getting wet. Well, if you've got slides, I just got it out of the shop, and they had to tear into all the ceilings and replace all the ceiling fans and air conditioning units. And there's a good chance they stirred up some kind of black mold up there somewhere. So we're going to do a bunch of testing and try to figure it out.
Yeah. Hey, I thought about this because you spent a lot of time in the Southeast on your coach trip, and then came back to the Southeast, kind of, because Kentucky's kind of the Southeast. I mean, and you were there during the start of pollen season. I'm just wondering if maybe some of it was connected to that. So a friend of mine, my wife was asking me about that. She says, "Kevin, okay?" And I think he's going to be okay. We need Kevin to be okay. So but you were kind of down here where it gets real thick.
Yeah, it's possible. And anything can change. I have never really been very sensitive to pollen. I mean, I can kind of tell when it's really bad, but this seems just worse than that.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's probably not a bad idea for me to go do a full workup anyway. Just to help me understand that whole process, the way they do it down there. But Jack's wife is also a chiropractor, and they're a big part of their practice is helping people with mold exposure. It's way more common than most people realize.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So, boy, I can't even begin to tell you how much stuff I want to talk about. One, the event, Matt's and the CMC. You've been around that event a long time, and we've been through these cycles where you kind of know what the feeling or the sentiment is going to be based on what's going on in the economy. When rates are good and there's lots of freight, everybody's happy. We remember how that show was almost depressing in 08, 09. That was when I think the first time the big OEMs pulled out, if I remember right. Everybody was just kind of subdued. I was kind of expecting that because, we'll talk about the market, I guess. We have so much to talk about today, but I was expecting a show like that. And the interesting thing was, this is either 33, 34 years for me total, something like that. This was the best show I've ever had, even though I got sick on the last day and totally missed it. There was something about the energy there. People were very happy. I didn't hear a single complaint about what's going on in the industry. A lot of it may have been kind of the social media. There was a lot of people there that I've been interacting with for years on social media and finally got to meet. I don't know what it was. It just seemed like a really good show. And of all the times I've done the CMC, start going all the way back to 2005, I made the statement, that was the most fun I've ever had on stage.
Well, you look like you were having a good time on stage. I'll tell you what was good. You were back to really engaging and sharing. And Kevin, you and I, one of the things that is why we get along so well is that not just our love for this industry, but we just love being with people. And I know that probably me a little bit more than you, but you like the idea of helping people.
Yeah.
Like the idea. I think you're laughing at that, but the idea of helping people is what I mean, and that's really why you do what you do, which is you just really want to help people in get to do what they love to do, which is the truck. To run the truck. And so there's a methodology to this, and if you follow it, boy, it's a lot of fun. And if you don't follow it, then it can be really hard. And that's really why I've loved working with you these several decades, and that, it's just the idea that we just want to help them get to do what they love to do, which is the truck and run their truck and run freight and be free and enjoy what they want to do. So, but yeah, I watched you on stage. You were having a great time. It was good to see you up there and talking to the audience.
Well, I'm going to explain that at some point. Not right now because you and I have so much to cover, but I talked about it on stage. I had a big breakthrough. I mean, maybe even one of the biggest of my career, and changed called an audible. I had 43 slides in my slide deck to get through, and I had timed it out. I figured I would probably get to somewhere between 30 and 35, and I always like to have some extra just in case. There was some argument about how far I got. I think it was maybe slide 5. Somebody said it was only 3. I don't know. So I talked the entire day without really changing a slide, because I was really talking from deep knowledge of just business concepts. I didn't need specifics. I didn't need numbers. I didn't need, detail. I was just talking and interacting a lot with the audience and trying to get them to understand why I was doing it. And I'm glad I did. And at some point, I don't know when, I'll explain it better. But I think on stage I almost made it sound like I regretted that I hadn't been doing that all along, because it's not the first time I had the thought. But then the more I got thinking about it, it just took me a little while to think about it. Had I attempted that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I think it would have failed. And if I would have stuck with it, the company might have failed. I mean, I think I had to teach things the way I was teaching them, and the realization that I came to is I don't have to anymore. Now I can teach the way I think is more important. It's better for the people that really want to succeed. I'll lose some people with it. I know I will. And that's okay. I'm also to the point where I don't need to please everybody anymore. Not that I ever tried to please everybody, but I wanted to please at least my whole tribe. And that's not even totally necessary anymore. I think I want to be more effective maybe to a smaller group.
Well, I hear your heart in that, Kevin, about you saying not wanting to please everybody. And it's kind of like, I got 6 kids, and my goal with my children, I'm not saying truckers are kids. I'm making no reference. I'm just kind of making a connection. Maybe. As a parent, you want your children to become adults. Not just, you don't want them, my goal is not for my kids to like me. I want them to like me because I want them to know that I have their best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And I want them to be able to grow and become what they were designed to be, which is the same kind of approach I think you take with where you are now in this business and in your leadership that you bring to the trucking industry. Is that your goal is to, a lot of times the best thing for you is not what you want to hear. Sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's It's gotten to a point where if you don't give what's necessary, someone's not going to be able to grow and become what they really want to be, which is a successful trucking company. And so I could see you as wanting to really give the information and to be able to talk about, discuss, help, and you certainly help. There's no doubt. And about what are the things that you need to do on a day in and day out basis that can help you be successful at what you've chosen to do, which is to run a trucking business. And if you do these things, man, it's a whole lot more fun. So I could see you as really kind of coaching that way, not necessarily, by the way, there's a lot of time players don't like to coach.
Yeah, right.
A lot of time. Because you know what? But you know what? That's not the coach's job. The coach's job is to get them to win. And when they win, guess what happens? The players are real happy. So when you're winning at trucking, you're a lot more happy. So I think I'm okay with the approach that you're taking on this. Really am. Because I think that's necessary. I really do.
And I think it's time. Like I said, I kind of felt bad that I didn't do it sooner in my career, and then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, things happen for a reason, and timing does matter. I think I've got way, way too much experience and knowledge to hold anything back. I think this is a better way to teach, and I'm going to teach it that way. The good news is, I also feel like, remember one of the questions we had from Barb, one of Larry Long's drivers, and she's like 22 or 23 years old, and she asked me a question about goal setting. And she keeps trying to goal set.
Oh, yeah, that was fantastic.
What a great question from somebody that age. So insightful.
Yeah.
And I had been talking about, if you want better results, ask better questions. And she just nailed it. At that age, already writing goals, she said, but when am I going to get clear about what my goals are? She said, I try. And I think my answer was something like, well, I'm going to be 61 this year, and I think I might be getting a little clarity now.
That's true.
And then the more I thought about it...
There was also Christian. Remember?
Oh, yeah, Christian. No, go ahead.
Great. You were talking about great questions. You were talking about asking the great questions, because the thing to do is to ask the question you need an answer to. And that's a great question. Christian kept asking really in depth, like, clarity questions, like, what do you mean by that? How does that work? How do you apply that in a business? And I was just impressed by him. He even came to the breakouts that you and I led, and that I had with another broker that was there as well. And it's just amazing. If you ask the right questions, guess what? You're on your way to getting the right answers, and that means success. And that's the same thing that the young lady that was asking, the 22-year-old, by the way, who was asking those right questions.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, we had a lot of good examples of really what I would call bad questions or poor questions. We always use the phrase, there's no such thing as a dumb question. There are bad questions, though, or questions that are not going to advance you in any way. And we saw a lot of those.
Let's say it that way. Let's say it that way. They're just not going to advance you.
Right.
They may solve a very short-term problem, but it's not going to solve a long-term problem.
Yeah, and some of them we had examples of just won't solve anything. There are people that would ask the question like, what's the one thing I can do? And when you start a question like that, you might as well just stop. I don't care what we're talking about. There's never one thing. Right. And that focus on trying to find one thing. And I couldn't get that idea across to a couple people. And I know I pounded it home, and somebody asked the question similar to that. What can we do in this environment with all these companies going out of business? Something along those lines. And my response was, where have you been all day? I mean, that's what I just spent 6 hours trying to cover, and I'm going to spend the next year talking about all those things that you can do. So when you ask those big, general, open-ended questions, it's not only is it not helpful, it will hurt your progress. You won't advance if you keep thinking there's one thing. If you're not understanding how complicated business is, then you're going to struggle. And I was pretty hard on a couple of people with my responses. I mean, I was rude, and sometimes you have to be rude to get their attention.
You were kind of direct. Well, I think that what to me those questions, and I think I like all questions, and I understand your point about explaining the question, but I think it shows that there was such a need. There's such a need, like and it's sort of like I don't know where to go right now, and so well there's a tremendous amount of sort of conditioning yourself on you got to do these things to get to these things to get to these things to get to these things in business that you have to do. And so I can totally understand, if you're looking for a single fix to anything, there never is one.
Right.
There's never, and I can tell you where it starts though. It always starts in one place, and it's where you take the finger and point it back at yourself and go, it's got to start with me.
Good point.
I got to figure out how I'm going to set my mind to what I want to do, and then set my goals, and then set how do I accomplish those goals? So absolutely on that.
So then, without getting too deep into this, but I want to get to a topic that I want to talk about with you today. I tried to, and I've done this before, I've tried to help people understand the difference between strategies and tactics in anything, but primarily in business, because that's what we're talking about. Strategies are like really, really big picture thoughts, ideas, goals. They don't really change very often, sometimes if ever. An example, our overriding strategy at Let's Truck. It's also something I can sum up in what you call an elevator pitch. Our overriding philosophy of Let's Truck is to help drivers and owner-operators live their best life. That's just
absolutely. Amen.
Yeah, that's our strategy. Now, how do you do that? It's like my secret to success in business. You serve your customer better than anybody else can. Those are simple sentences.
There you go.
They tell you a lot, but in some ways they tell you nothing. I mean, they tell you where you want to get to or what you're trying to accomplish, and then how do you do that? And that's when we get into tactics, which are everyday, sometimes really simple ways of doing things. They can change constantly, and they should if you're really running a business the way you should be, because everything else changes. That doesn't mean we have to change our strategy. In fact, we shouldn't. If your strategy's jumping all over the place, you need to stop and get that figured out. But tactics change all the time. Tactics change based on the environment, based on the industry, based on economics, based on technology changing, new products, new services available. It's constant. And I recently had to change my mind on a tactic that I have been very, very outspoken on for years. And I knew that as the minute I did this, I was going to take heat and people were going to be confused. And I'm trying to explain why I changed something I've been so adamant about. Any guess as to what I might be talking about today?
You're talking about your approach to delivering the CMC?
No, that was one. This one is more tactic wise. It's a product or service I have been very outspoken against. Probably even used the phrase "I would never do that," which I shouldn't use the word "never" or always.
I know where you're going. I know where you're going with this. You're talking about factoring.
Oh, please! You're not allowed to use that word on my show.
No, the F word.
The F word. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, the F word. So, and I've explained why. I've given people other strategies. Look, factoring is just borrowing money. I mean, let's just, people say, no, it's not, it's a fee. Look, you borrow money, you pay a fee to borrow money. There's lots of ways we can borrow money, and in my opinion, factoring is just outrageously expensive. So, and I'm a pretty strong believer in, as a small business owner, you should try to borrow as little as possible. That's the number one reason businesses go out of business. They run out of money. They're undercapitalized. And if I have to pay a lot of money to borrow money, my expenses go up. I've said, use a home equity line of credit, use credit cards. There are other ways to do this. And I've been really adamant about that. And then I said, if you find yourself factoring a lot, that's a problem in and of itself. So what would make me change my mind about this?
Well, potentially there might be a more open offer that might be more beneficial, or it might be more suitable to, well, I'd say this. I'd say in the past, a lot of times when you borrow money, you're on the sort of the bank's terms, right? So you're on whatever they dictate to you, and you got to live by them, and they're not very flexible as far as like helping to run your business. But I think if you could find one that was more built for the carrier's needs, then you might be more open-minded to it.
That's a big part of it, no doubt. And then combine that with, and this product's been around for a while. It's a truck stop product. It's been around for a while. I have ignored it, and you knew I was ignoring it. I didn't want to know about it because I was just against factoring. So I thought, well, it's just one more factoring company. Everybody's got it these days. So I just wasn't paying attention. Well, our environment has changed. It is really, really risky to be a small carrier today. We have companies, big companies that we didn't expect that had a gazillion dollars like Convoy go out of business just about overnight with no warning. And they're not the only one. There's a lot of small brokers going out, and that puts a carrier at a huge amount of risk because we extend credit to these brokers. And if they're going out, that's a real problem. I've watched that take carriers down with them. It happens almost every time. A broker goes out, carriers will go with them because they're undercapitalized and running on such small margins. And so I started looking at how do we protect ourselves from that. One, try not to extend too much credit to any single broker. Well, that breaks my other rule. I don't want to work with too many brokers all the time. So, and every time I work with a new broker, that's even more risk. So that doesn't seem like a good idea. If you've got enough cash on a home equity line of credit, that might be a better way. But the environment changed so much that I'm worried. I would rather have somebody else assume that risk, even if it cost me money. But then I thought, okay, I should at least start looking at the factoring companies and see if I can find the best deal, just in case I have to tell somebody to use this. One of my huge problems with factoring was it was all or nothing, and that would still be a no-go for me. If I had to factor every one of my freight bills,
I agree.
I would not say no. I would say hell no. You're not getting that kind of money out of me. When I have customers that right now I can trust, their credit's still strong, they're paying me on time.
Right.
So when I found out that there were factors out there, not many, that allow you to pick and choose and only factor the freight bills that it makes sense, then I thought, well, where has this been all my life? That changes things. And then they have I don't want to say a good rate, because none of these rates are good in my mind, but a pretty decent rate for what we call non-recourse, meaning even if that broker goes out of business, I don't owe anything back to anybody. I'm covered, and the factor is taking the risk. Those two things in today's environment are so big that for the first time in 35 years since I've been talking about this topic, I would now say, no, here's a reason why I would factor, and here's the factoring company I would use to do it.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you saying that. To me, I'm like you. Look, at truck stop, and me personally, I mean, the thing you want is the most profitability for your business. And if you have to borrow money, you're going to have to pay a percentage of your profit to utilize it. And so that's never a good thing. But when conditions change in a marketplace and there's need for it, then it's like being able to cash flow your business to stay in business, because there's a little bit more risk right now. Margins are a little thinner right now. So the idea is to be able to keep the cash flow going. And if you can do it on your terms and not like somebody else's terms, and you don't get tied down to it, then you have optionality. You can get out if you don't want to do it. To me, and I agree, I appreciate you saying that, because truck stops, Kevin, truck stops have always been this way. We want to be the most flexible for the carriers so they can be successful. That's all that matters to us. Is so you as a business can be successful. We have factoring because it's a necessary thing in the marketplace to cash for especially small operations, to cash flow their business and de-risk some things. If there's a broker that you have some so you never used before and you want to de-risk it, you might factor that one load. If you got a lot of trust in one and there's no risk whatsoever, you don't have to factor that at all. So to me, I appreciate you saying that, but that's a big deal. But you got to have options to be able to run it the way you want it as a business and not have somebody else dictate terms to you.
Yeah, and I talked about it some at the CMC. I talked about it at the show. I posted something about it, and immediately I got a flood. I can't believe you're changing your mind. What a sellout. Somebody must be paying you a lot of money for this. No, Truck Stops have been paying me money for a long, long time. I'm always upfront about that. And and everybody else at the company knows, I refuse to talk about their factory. So it wasn't the money that changed anything. I'm still receiving the same amount of money. I changed my mind for all the reasons I just explained. But that's part and parcel for what I do. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try to explain.
What you said about conditions changing, I think is super important, because I want every trucker to hear this. All right, look, are we in the same market that we were in 2021 when you got $7 a mile, $6 a mile, $5 a mile? We in that same market? No, the conditions have changed. Any smart business person, any smart person running any entity adjusts to the market or the conditions that they're in. So if you're not doing that, then you're putting your business at risk. And so all you're doing is giving advice. Look, conditions have changed. I'm trying to give the best wise counsel I can. The wise counsel now is make sure you can de-risk your business and cash flow the best way possible.
Yeah, and my advice on this will be like my advice on anything. I don't get on the air and promote much of anything. I mean, I don't open up shows talking about a product or a service or trying to sell something. I usually open with, current events, news, some business thought I've had. To me, these are solutions when people call. If I don't get a call all month about somebody who I think could use some factoring, well, I'm not going to talk about factoring, just like I don't talk about most things until somebody needs that. I mean, that's the difference between my show and nothing wrong with traditional radio where you promote things and run commercials. You got to pay the bills. But I don't do that here because it would confuse people. So just so people know, I have made a pretty major shift on that topic. It's not going to be a big deal, but it's one more tool I have to help somebody with. And I think the timing is right because of the market and the product.
Well, yeah, 100%. And the ironic thing about this is that this is the way truck factoring since day one. We started over 20 years ago, and we've always had it this way. And we've always tried to keep it the lowest cost possible, the most flexibility possible for the trucker, because, again, we're dedicated to the success of small trucking companies, and we want to do everything we can. And if they need factoring, we're going to offer it at the best opportunity for the carrier.
So there's a good point. Truck Stop has been offering it for a long, long time. Truck Stop has been paying me money for a long, long time. And it just as recently as my last stop in Boise, when you were there and I got up and I had like 30 minutes to talk to the sales group that was there, somebody asked about factoring. And remember what I said? I hate factoring. I'm not going to talk about factoring.
Oh yes,
and the whole room.
I remember the look on their faces.
Everybody's jaws dropped, and they're like, "Why is this guy here? What's he talking about?" And I'm like, "That's just my opinion. It's always been that way." And even just that recently, which was last October, whenever it was, I had not thought the whole thing through, and I hadn't realized how different your factoring was.
Well, that's on us. We should be talking about the benefits of it even better. So, but I appreciate you. Here's the thing, and I think the most thing that what I think your listeners need to hear from you is that it's business advice. You as Kevin Rutherford are going to give the best business advice you can. And right now, conditions have changed. You need to change your point of view on those conditions and figure out how to adjust to them. Because if you adjust to things, guess what? You can survive, and in a lot of cases, even thrive in those. But if you don't adjust, then you are at the will and whim of a market. In other words, it dictates to you what you're going to do, not you dictating to it. And if you want to be successful in business, it's you dictating how you're going to run your business. If you can do that, then you're going to survive. You're going to end up thriving eventually, because you're able to adjust to it. But if you don't, it's hard. It's just not hard. So you're just giving wise advice.
Well,
I wouldn't want you to give anything else, Kevin. I would expect nothing less out of you.
Yeah, and one of the ways I can help people with something like this, because now a lot of people might be confused, and they should be. Well, should I factor? Shouldn't I factor? Well, here's how I would answer that. And sometimes the best way for me to answer a question is, what would I do? If I were a small carrier right now and I were extending credit to brokers on virtually every load, which is what you're doing, or if you have shipper direct freight, it's even worse. Some of those shippers don't like to pay for 60 or 90 days, and they get away with it sometimes. If I were in that situation, what I would do is I'd look at my cash flow, and if my cash flow were strong, I'd say, okay, this isn't a big deal, but I would go get the account set up. Because that's the beauty of this one. You can just have it ready to go. It's not like I have to commit and start giving somebody all of my invoices. I wouldn't do that. But now I would have it ready, and I would be paying attention to every one of my freight bills. Do I think that this freight bill is at risk? And if there's enough risk there, then I'm just going to factor this. And that's the best way I could answer it, is be ready, understand why you might factor one freight bill and not another. That's something I can certainly help people with here. And then if I thought, hey, you know what, I don't need to be up at night worrying about this one, let me just factor this one. So that's the best way I can describe how I would be using it right now.
Yeah, Kevin, that's amen. That's right on the money. I'd also say this. Look, there's a lot of challenges and risks in the marketplace in general right now. Fraud is still a reality. There's still bad actors out there trying to do the wrong thing and take money that they don't, they're trying to steal money and steal even freight. So there's also de-risking that in a marketplace. So, when you factor a load with in a non-recourse factor, then you are taking your risk out of it, because if it comes back and there's an issue with somebody not paying or something gets stolen, guess what? You've still gotten paid, because so there's a way to de-risk that too. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to be hyper worried about this marketplace, but you need to be aware. And so that it protects you on that end too. Again, until October of 2022, we didn't have freight rampant in the industry. It wasn't as big an issue, but we have it now, and until everything gets locked down with security like it needs to be, the conditions have changed. Just giving wise counsel on how to protect yourself and protect your business.
Yes, definitely. All right, I know you've only got a couple of minutes left, and you've got to get on a plane. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
As always, let me give an update in the market, because tell you what, here's what's interesting is I read on FreightWaves the other day, and then I like to listen to Craig Fuller. He has an interesting view on the marketplace, and he sees a lot of data. He sees the market, and he talks about maybe the marketplace is beginning to show signs of a beginning of a recovery, and we're seeing a little bit of that too at Truck Stop, where the market demand index, or the pressure in the market, has been in the 70s, which normally the balance is 50 now. So when it's above 50, that means it's more favorable to the carriers in the marketplace and more favorable to brokers, because the rates should start to go up because there's more freight in the marketplace. But it's been in the 70s for the last 4 weeks. Load availability, in other words, how much freight is in the marketplace, has been up 20% in the last 6 weeks over normal. The normal in the marketplace, about 20% above normal.
Wow.
That's promising. All that promising. Rates tend to follow. And overall, the rates are kind of still where they've been. But this past week, all three segments went up. Van went up 2 cents. Flatbed went up 5 cents, and reefer went up 5 cents. that's really promising. And fuel went up a penny too, so you got to watch fuel and things. It went up. The fuel surcharge index is 51 cents right now. So just pay attention to those things and make sure that you're negotiating anything and know where you are in the market, because that's super important. And as conditions change, you got to adjust to them. I think about those people in Baltimore that when the the Francis Scott Key Bridge went down, guess what? The conditions have changed, and they're having to adjust to them. And by the way, overall trucking is adjusting to them as well. So they will change. And so your counsel is really wise today.
Well, speaking of which, at some point I'd like to do a show on how we are already starting to see the impacts of that bridge in trucking. And it's a horrible event, but if it benefits trucking, and we should know that, we should know how, and really we should understand that, not take advantage of it, but understand it and realize that we are the key to trying to smooth out this disruption as much as possible. We may have to step up as an industry and cover this freight. So there's going to be opportunity there.
Well, what I'll tell you on this is, and then I'll send it over to you, our chief economist and your friend too, Noel Perry, wrote a great piece on how the bridge collapse is going and how logistics will adjust to it. It's a great piece. And he would be the person to have on, because he has that macro scope on how logistics can adjust to it. So I'd love to have Noel on with you, because he's the expert on that, man. There's nobody better.
Yeah. Well, if you happen to talk to him, let him know. I'll reach out to him too, but I haven't even had time to read that email he sent out yet.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure I'll resend it to you, and then I'll copy you in on a text with him. So maybe you can have him on the show. I'll join too if you want me to. But Noel's really the guy that can speak to all the way the ins and outs, and even to the containerized freight and all that sort of stuff. So, but he's the man. But good talking to you today. Good being on the show with you as always. Glad you're almost back up to speed, and appreciate it. And just appreciate what all you do to help truckers out there. Man, you're the man.
You are welcome. You guys have fun. Tell Brink I said hey, and enjoy the process.
Oh, man, I definitely will. Thank you, brother. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. All right, we don't have any phone calls. Could be that people think we're no longer on the air. I don't know. It's kind of been 2 weeks. Phone lines are open. I have a ton of topics I could cover, but if I don't get any phone calls, we might wrap this up early. We did the Friday show from Matt, and we had some technical issues. I knew we would. I was surprised that with such a small amount of time to get prepared, we managed to pull it off and got 3 or 4 of us on the air at the same time. Stayed on the air most of the time. It's a very challenging environment for somebody like me with a small amount of equipment, not a lot of help. Aaron actually had to leave that day. So I was kind of flying completely solo. It was always challenging, even when we had huge crews and engineers and tons of people and equipment with SiriusXM to do it from the show floor. So I was glad we pulled it off. Probably would have worked out better for me if I just wouldn't have bothered. I had to take so much equipment with me. It was more stress and worry. But sometimes things work out for a reason. And I think the reason this time was reconnecting with Chuck Snow. I haven't seen Chuck since our last CMC. I think I've only talked to him 2 or 3 times since then, and they were quick calls. So to get to spend a couple hours with Chuck and reminisce, and he was having a ball telling his story. And I found out that Chuck and his wife now live in Vancouver, which is not far where my son and grandkids are. We need to make a trip up there to see our new granddaughter. So I'm also going to spend some time with Chuck. I've got some ideas, some pretty big ideas I really value his opinion on. So I think the fact that I went all through all of that just to put on a couple-hour show on Friday, I think the reason was more to do with reconnecting with Chuck, so I'm excited about that. All right, looks like we've got calls coming in. That's a wonderful thing. So instead of me getting to all the topics I had, we're just going to get to the phone calls. Let's get started in California today. Mike, good morning.
Oh, hi, good morning, Kevin.
What's on your mind today?
I was just calling. No, I was listening to you talking with Brent about factoring, and you're changing your mind about factoring.
Yeah.
And I don't see it as being a negative. I think you just gave all of us an example out of the book "Who Moved My Cheese."
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
I don't see it as a waffling or pivoting, like you were saying, with the market, the economy changing as it is. Small carriers need to be able to pivot, at a moment's notice.
And
so this factoring now and maybe not factoring later is a good thing for everybody.
Yeah, I really think so. I didn't change my mind easy on this one, but once I looked at the evidence, I thought that I can't not change my mind. I would be doing people a disservice not to try to explain to them why it's different now. On Wednesday, I'm going to do this again on a health issue, but it's a little crazier. I'm going to change my mind on a pretty big topic that I already changed my mind once on. I'm going to go back. So there was version 1 of this issue we talked about for years. Then I changed my mind. We'll call that version 2. And now I'm going to talk about version 3, which is really just version 1 again. And I do it much more on health than I do on business or trucking. One, health is changing so fast, you just have to be flexible. We are learning so much new stuff. I just got done reading a book on health that was one of the most difficult for me to read, but also pretty eye-opening on a topic that I didn't know that I would learn much new about, diabetes. I read the new book by Gary Taubes. Incredible book, not easy to get through at all, very detailed, lots of history, goes all the way back to the 1800s. But he did such a deep dive into this. And like I said, I'm going to change my mind back to something I already changed my mind from because I have new information.
Yeah, as conditions change, we need to change with those conditions.
Yeah, and honestly, this isn't...
Rather than being set in our ways one way, and that's how it's going to be. You be flexible.
Yeah, the decision on factoring had two big factors. The environment and the market changed, and there's a new product available. This one on health, nothing has really changed other than my understanding of the knowledge that I didn't completely understand before.
Right. So yeah, like I said, just, even the coming up change on Wednesday is just reinforcing the lessons out of that book about moving my cheese.
Yeah, you're right.
So even those who, like you've been kind of set in your ways so long, but you realize you need to pivot, you need to make a change with the conditions.
Yeah.
Or with the education about health and all that. So
yeah, and
if you can change, we can change.
There's a fine line. I don't want to be so wishy-washy that every time I hear one new thing, I'm ready to change my mind. And I don't think I've ever done that. I mean, I think I work hard to make sure that there are darn good reasons for me to change my mind or my advice. Yeah.
If you get stuck in your ways, then I take back to that book. It really impressed me the way, some of the characters didn't want to change at all.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that book back up. People, with everything going on in the world right now, lots of change happening so fast. That's a good book. Even if you've read it, go back and read it again. What does it take, like 2.5 hours or something to listen to it? It's really short.
Yeah, I love it on Audible.
Yeah.
It's like an hour listen is all it is.
Yeah, and it's like a cartoon. I mean, it doesn't really hurt your brain to try to think of anything technical. It's just a different way to think about how we accept change or not.
There's even a cartoon on YouTube I watched.
Was there really? That'd be good. I should go look that up.
10-minute watch on YouTube, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it brings it all together. You just see it visually, the cartoon characters, and you get to read the book, listen to it. It just ties it all together and helps reinforce those lessons that they're simple, but they're effective.
Yeah. The first time I heard the characters, the two mice, I thought it had something to do with like cocaine or meth because it was Sniff and Scurry.
Yeah.
So, all right. Good stuff,
Yeah.
Mike.
All right.
Anything
Well,
else on your mind?
Thank you, Kevin. That's all I had for today. Appreciate
All
your
right.
help.
Thanks for the call. Let's go to Texas. Mark, good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you at the show.
Yeah, it was. It was good to see a lot of people at the
That
show.
was brief.
Meet some new people. Unfortunately, somebody shared their cooties with me, but I think that's more about my immune system right now than anything else.
So anyway, one of the things I was going to talk about was how you were talking about it's this old school knowledge in fuel mileage where some guy got loose on Twitter with you about getting better fuel mileage at 80 miles per gallon. 80 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And it's like this whole knowledge below the people that are in our tribe that don't pay attention to these things, and they've got these old, archaic, preconceived notions that fuel mileage doesn't matter, or they don't do their numbers, and it's mind-boggling that anybody can be in business and not understand these things. And the fact that I know people that still drive 75 miles an hour in the car hauling business, and they buy fuel at the wrong places. And I make the comment, and I'm like, well, you should have. And they're on the same fuel. They're on the Aztec. I'm like, why did you buy fuel there when you could have bought 60 gallons back here, and you could have gone over here, and you could have got it significantly cheaper?
Yeah.
And this same person is struggling out there. I know he's struggling because he's complaining now. And it's like, and I made the comment to him today about something on a load, and I said, these loads pay this. I said, no, they don't pay that. This is what they pay because I get the emails on it. And besides, you have to take your cut that you have to pay that guy's leased onto off of there, so you don't get that rate.
Right.
And it's like these people think the faster you go, the better it is, and that's just not true. And it's just besides, I bought some of Pittsburgh Power's new product, which I'm testing now. It's just preliminary numbers, and so I think it works, but I don't know how well it's going to be efficient enough for me. But it's just mind-boggling that these people do this, and this whole I get better at 80 miles per hour, and you don't.
Just so people understand the example you're talking about, here was the claim that his truck gets better fuel economy at 65 than 55, and the same fuel economy at 80 as 55. Now, there are a couple tiny exceptions I've found over the years where going faster can increase fuel economy. It's usually because of a maintenance issue, like a blown charger or cooler. And the extra RPM can sometimes overcome with a little more boost. That's one, but that's pretty rare. There is no way. It is a physical impossibility for a truck to get the same fuel economy at 80 miles an hour than it does at 55. And their example was, well, I'm in the sweet spot. Well, hold on. Even if that were true and the sweet spot made that much of a difference, it doesn't. But you have a whole bunch of other gears. We can be at the same RPM at 55, just choose a different gear. That throws your whole argument right out the window. And the other thing they don't understand, RPM range is a tiny part of fuel economy. It is a part, and we focus on it because we can, and we can improve it. But fuel economy is all about physics. Mechanical resistance is not linear. Wind resistance is not linear. Rolling resistance on the road is not linear. It's exponential. It goes up by multiplications, and it's huge. All of those factors are negatively impacted every time you go 1 mile per hour more in speed. And now we're somebody's going to claim that, the hell is that, 25 miles per hour, and they're going to get the same fuel economy because they're in the sweet spot. That is so ignorant. Here's what I'd love to be able to do. Here's what I'd love to be able to do. I would love to make a $10,000 bet on this, that if I'm wrong, I'll give $10,000 to a trucking charity. If you're wrong, all I want you to do is admit you're wrong. And the only way I would accept the proof is I go out in my coach and I follow them and I watch them put the fuel in every time and I calculate it. And there is no doubt in my mind I would never put a penny of my money at risk, because that is just such an outrageous claim.
No, it is. Let's use an example in another industry that's worried about fuel economy, and that's the airline and the airline cargo industry. So when they go up there to between 30 and 40,000 feet, most of the time it's either they've got a tailwind or they got a headwind, and it depends on where they're at. And they will slow down to save fuel economy up there, because it doesn't make sense to spend X amount of dollars to save 20 minutes. I mean, it's 20 minutes.
Right.
And sometimes they'll change altitudes to find their sweet spot. But, they're concerned about fuel mileage too. And the faster they go, the more fuel they burn. You can read about it. You can look it up. And it's like, and there are people on Twitter and they talk about that. And it's the same principle that the faster you go, the more fuel it takes. It does in your car. It doesn't. And the fact that sit there and say that is either one, you're lying, two, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, or three, a combination of both.
Right.
It's just mind-boggling that you're going to be in business and you're not concerned about saving, what is it, ego? I believe it's ego to think that they have in their mind that they think that they're smarter than everybody else. It's just mind-boggling that people. I just think people are stupid when they do that and they say that. But anyway.
Well, and if we want to get down to the physics of fuel mileage, airlines don't have nearly the problems we have, and here's why. I just talked about rolling resistance on the road going up exponentially. They have none of that. I talked about mechanical resistance through the driveline going up exponentially. They don't have much of that. The only real mechanical resistance they face is in the engine itself. A jet engine is just a jet engine. It's not connected to a driveline and a transmission and gear sets and differentials. All of those things have mechanical resistance. The turbine engine itself is what propels the plane, and you only have a little bit of mechanical resistance inside that engine. So two of the big factors we have to deal with that are affected by speed, they really don't have at all. It's only aerodynamics for them. And I remember when I first saw what they call the little winglets, those wing tips at the very end that go straight up at the end, and Southwest was one of the first to use them. Southwest is one of the most, efficient airlines out there. They have been for a long time. And I remember reading that didn't cost that much to do, and it saves $100,000 a year in fuel.
Yeah, it's little things, and everybody's looking for an advantage. And to sit there and say that I go faster, it's my sweet spot. Okay, come on, please.
Here's another reason they do it. You mentioned ego and ignorance, and those are two factors. Another one is they're addicted to driving fast. They hate driving slow. They're addicted to driving fast, and they want to justify it.
I know somebody who's no longer in the trucking business. He's in the funeral service. He became a mortician, believe it or not. But he tried his hand at owner-operating. And I kept telling him when he did that, I said, you need to slow down. And he was struggling. And then he would tell me, he goes, I can't. I just can't drive 55. Just like Sammy Hagar, I can't drive 55. He had to drive 70 and 75 in a non-aerodynamic Kenworth pulling a flatbed. Right. And he got horrible fuel mileage. And I told him, I said, slow down. I just can't. And so you know what? You're right. They're addicted to it. They don't understand it. They think that, it's not going to hurt me right now. This little bit's not going to hurt me, but then it's just constantly hurting them. And they just don't understand it. You're absolutely 100% right. They're addicted to it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, anybody that has slowed down realizes it's not easy in the beginning. It does feel like you're never going to get anywhere. But once I drove at 57 for so many years. These last couple trips when I needed to run 75 and 80 in the coach, and I explained it. Look, that money's not a factor for me. The coach itself is not my business. It's not how I generate revenue. It's a tool that allows me to do things that I couldn't do flying. And if I have to spend the extra money, I've looked at it and it's worth it. So I didn't care about my fuel economy, but boy, I'll tell you what, it was not easy to drive 70 at first and 75. And honestly, I can't sustain 80. I tried it a couple times out west where, the speed limit actually is 80, and I just couldn't do it. It seemed way too unsafe to me in a vehicle that big and heavy.
Well, you're putting a lot of stress on your vehicle,
and you can hear it and
opinion.
feel it. You're right. I felt it in my bones what it was doing to the coach.
Yeah. Can I brag on somebody real quick
Sure.
that's helped me in the last week? David Counts.
Excellent.
Now, I'll go by his place all the time, and it's like, and we were talking up there at the show. We all went out to eat, but I called him and I said, because he's always made the point every time I've been there. He goes, if you have a problem here, stop in. We'll see what we can do. And I called him last week, and I said, hey, I've got this, my air compressor short cycling, and I've tried two things over here, and it's continually doing it, and I don't know what to do, and I'm scared to just go somewhere. But I said, can you help me take a look at this? And he goes, sure, come on by. So I came on by, and we backed in there, and we changed I put a new air dryer on last fall because it was failing. I had water in the system, so a new air dryer on. But what was happening is it's short cycling like clockwork. Every 30 seconds, the compressor start off, go off, on. And so he was like, we got to change the governor. So I said, just change the governor. I said, change the governor. I learned what an unloader valve is. I had that changed.
Right.
We changed it. He said, for shits and giggles, we're going to change we changed the air governor again. And finally, he's just like, because I went up to load it, and I came back on Friday, and I'm sitting there, and then he's like, I don't know, Mark. He said, turn it on. He said, as soon as the pop-off valve goes, kill it. And I did, and he was standing right over. He goes, there's an air leak here. And it says it's only for a second. Come to find out, and I fixed it yesterday. It was there's an air line that comes off the front of the compressor that's goes to the fan clutch, and I had no idea that that was there.
Right.
And I told Paul yesterday or the day before, I said, I've never heard Kevin and them at Pittsburgh Power talk about the air line from off the front of the compressor to the fan clutch. Well, the quick connect fitting that come out of there on the other side of the pop-off valve was leaking as soon as it would pop off, the air would shoot out of there for about.
Okay.
And I mean, you had to be right down there with it to find it.
Yeah.
And that was what it was. And it's like,
So just to help people a little bit, because I know sometimes if you can't picture this or you've never worked on it, there's at least three terms we use for that valve. You just used two of them. The unloader valve, the pop-off valve. I've always called it the spitter valve.
Those are three different. They're three different. The unloader valve goes down into the compressor. It's on top of the compressor.
See, this is why people even I get confused, because I've heard people use that term, all three of those terms for the spitter valve, which is what I've always called it. The one that when you get to pressure, it releases pressure for just a second.
Yeah, but the unloader valve, from what I've learned in the last week, basically tells the compressor when to unload and load. And it's basically internal. There's a lid that goes on top of it with two hex screws, and that's on top of the compressor. And then in front of where the valve that comes off the front of the compressor that goes to the air hose that runs up to the fan clutch, there's if you talk to a dealership, they call it a safety valve.
Yes.
Well, that wasn't the safety valve wasn't the problem.
Right. There's
Pop-off
another
valve,
word.
safety valve, same thing. It's right there. But that's what they call it at the dealership. They call it a safety valve.
Which
and
is probably the most correct term, but people get confused because we use all these terms interchangeably sometimes for different parts.
Yes. So, and this all happens up there on the compressor before it gets to the governor, which is down below and on the other side of the truck underneath where the governor is. And all this happens there, and it still tells it to come on because when there's a leak from the compressor through this, and this was through a quick connect, it had a little L swivel on the front of it, it would leak out of there, so it would take the pressure off the compressor. So the compressor would think that you're completely out of air, so
Correct.
it comes back on every 30, like clockwork,
Right.
every 10 to 20 seconds. It's just like clockwork. It's like you wouldn't even know it if you weren't sitting. You kill the engine, you're sitting, you have your head right over the compressor. You wouldn't even know it, and it's like, you sit up there and you're thinking, and there's enough noise in the engine when it's running that you don't hear it.
Oh,
and
of
it's
course
like,
not. Yeah.
and so it was like, what are you doing? It's like we called this guy that put on my up in Montgomery that put on my air dryer, and he's like, "Oh, you're gonna have to put a top end on rebuild the top of the compressor and all like that. And that's what's causing it." And it's like, that wasn't it. It was a $36 fix, is what it was.
Just a leak.
But
such a weird
it was
leak
just a simple leak.
that it
was
took
such a weird leak in a weird location.
took two people to find it, and you were very fortunate to have somebody as mechanically brilliant as David being the one to help
he's
you.
like, it's just like, yeah, because when I left out of there, and he called me Friday morning. I was fueling on my way back, loading up there at West Point, and I was short fueling, getting 60 gallons to get me back or cheap fuel up there in Shorter. And he called me. He goes, I spent last night researching this, and this is what I think it is, because it bothered him so much.
I
And
know.
he sat there and he went home and he
Yep.
researched it, and it's like, it's just there. He's going to do something else on my truck this week too, if I can get the parts or whatever and get over there. But it's like it's such a pleasure to go in that place and deal with him and all like that. And it's like I said, how much do I owe you? Don't worry about it right now. I'll get to that. And I'm like, and it's just like you know how he is, because I took a picture there and I posted it to you. You probably missed it if you were sick or whatever. And I tweeted it to you. He caught a sign of his business there, part of my car hauler there, and I was like, unlike you, I didn't move in here.
That's right. Yeah. No,
because we talked about you because you pulled in and you dropped an engine coming in there.
I did. Yeah, and then I did live there. I should probably use it as like a second or third address, because when I do end up there, I seem to stay there an awful long time. So.
Well, it's a very pleasant place.
I'm fascinated by it. I mean, I spent a whole day just talking to him about his CNC machine and how they make all their own parts now for the filters, and it's just, and he is one of the most talented people I have ever known, and he has something that's rare. That is, he is so mechanically inclined, and he understands physics and engineering. I mean, he can make anything work, and he can fabricate something and it works the way it's supposed to, but he is also an incredible artist. And that's unusual to have both of those skills. He can make something work the way it should work, and he can make it beautiful at the same time. And he does, when he builds those crazy, $400,000 muscle cars, which I still have a hard time getting my head around, he fabricates almost everything himself. Stainless steel turbo systems. He does all his own upholstery work. His paint work is just unmatched. He is just, but he's so humble and down to earth, and but it just, he's just such a talented guy.
Yeah, they're gonna fabricate a piece broke off on the side of my car hauler, and I said, I got to find the welder. He goes, we can weld that. I said, you can weld that? He goes, yeah, we can weld that.
He can weld anything.
Well, I said, I got the parts, and he said, we could fabricate it if you want us to. I'm like, well, I've already ordered the part, but I texted him. I said, I got the part of the part, but Cottrell didn't send the brackets. I said, I said, as usual, they screwed up the order. And I said, they sent everything I ordered from them, but they didn't send the brackets to mount this piece on the side. And but he was like, we can just. He said,
Yeah.
we were talking when I left. He said, park your truck when you come back. Park trailer here, drop your trailer here. You'll pull your truck over in here, and that's where the fabrication is. And it's like, we will just build that for you. So, like,
as much as I love what he does, his business is. Have you ever seen his RV, the white one?
No.
So he took
No.
he took a Freightliner Columbia and stretched the frame out and built his RV from scratch. Yeah, and I mean from scratch. Every body panel, every single piece, the slides, it is all completely fabricated by him. It's just incredible what he can do. And it's I keep telling him, David, if you ever decide to get rid of that thing, I want it. I wanted him to build me one. And it's not that he can't. He just doesn't have time. I mean, I've never seen a guy that's so busy. He runs the he's got the towing contract there on I-10 in the local area, and he's got the RV shop, and he builds the muscle cars, and he's got Fleet Air Filter. And here's the other crazy thing. Most days he goes home at 4:30. He's not like one of those guys that spends, 14, 16 hours a day at the shop. They roll in about 8:30, 9 in the morning, and he goes home about 4:30 every day. And he spends a lot of time with his family. I don't know how he gets all that done.
It's like he's got a really great crew there because it's like, he needed the part for this. He went in there and digging and found this. And it's like, I said,
well,
and it's in there on the shelf. I said, you sell those OPS filters? He goes, I got a couple laying around here. He goes, we don't, not officially, but
Right. Yeah. No. Hey, Mark, I got to move along. Good talking to you. It's good to get back on the air and catch up with things. I'm starting to feel it a little bit, though. I still got gunk in my chest. I'm trying to get rid of it. I'm trying not to cough on the air here. But phone lines are open. Looks like we dropped a couple calls while I was talking. If you want to jump in and join us, hit that call now button on your app or dial 319-527-6791. Let's go to Oklahoma. Paul, welcome.
Howdy.
What's on your mind today?
Up there, the MAT show, the FMCSA had the deal about the lease purchase task force or whatever they call them, that shit.
Yeah, how'd that go?
So, I didn't go to it, but I heard OIDA on Landline Now talking about it, and a driver that got up there and spoke said he'd been this is played on Landline Now. He said he'd been driving for 25 years, and 17 of those years he'd been in lease purchase contracts.
Wow.
With, I think it was like 7 or 9 different carriers, something like that. And he'd done like 9 different leases, and he said 7 of them he failed at, and 2 he was successful. Well, to me, if he spent 17 years in a lease purchase contract, he wants successful. I don't care which way you slice it. Because, in my opinion, the idea of a lease purchase contract is to lease it and own it. So here he is, 17 years. And
so here's my question. When he got up to speak about these, was he for them or against them?
He said he wanted some changes, but he didn't want them eliminated altogether.
Well, good. At least he's that makes sense. That's logical, and he's being honest. As far as changes, look, I think people know how I feel about lease purchase at all. Not only would I never, ever recommend doing it once, and I've talked about why, I can't imagine doing 9 and failing at 7 of them. I can't imagine how
doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
And I can't imagine how hard he has worked and how little money he's probably made all these years, even in the 2 that he's successful, or I guess his definition of success is he finished it. To me, it's just way, way too much work and too much risk and not enough reward. And I've run the numbers many, many times. But I don't want to see them go away. I mean, I've looked at them over and over, and there's nothing illegal about them. They meet all the requirements for an independent contractor. They're just an option. And why do people want to keep getting rid of options? I don't. It's not even an option I like.
Yeah.
I talk people out of it. I wrote the book on it. You know, I'm shocked why, and I'm glad they didn't. But why wasn't I contacted? I mean, seriously, I doubt that there's many people in this country that know more about lease purchase programs or have read as many of them or has worked with as many people with their accounting on them than I have. ATBS would also come to mind. ATBS has, it may even be the majority of their clients are in lease purchase programs. I don't think that they were part of this. Why not reach out to the people that really understand the numbers behind these things? I would have had to have said no, but I don't know why they didn't at least reach out. Like I said, I wrote the book, a physical book that I wrote about this topic. And I have the numbers to back it up, but in no way do I want them to go away. And I can't think of any significant changes that would make anything any better.
Well, when I went to OIDA to renew my membership, and, you know, she making small talk with me. I don't know who the lady was, but and she said, so glad to see you're renewing. I said, yeah, sometimes I wonder why. I said, because I disagree with just about everything you fight for or against.
Yeah.
I like what? And I said, well, split speed limits, lease purchase deals. I said, you just need to do more education for drivers.
Yeah.
And she didn't disagree with me, but
well,
she might not like the answers I gave her, but
I'm sure she didn't, but she asked. And
I told her.
And they should ask. They should want to know. They are a member-driven organization. They should be doing what their members want them to do. Just like any business should do the best they can to do what their customers want them to do. But I've explained what I think their only real problem is. I think their real problem is they try to represent two very, very different groups of people, and they act like there's no difference. There is a huge difference between people who drive trucks as employees and people who drive trucks as part of their business. Whether it's a lease purchase or they own the truck or have their own authority, none of that matters. But the one issue that really absolutely matters is I don't know how you represent employee drivers and business owners on the same topic. What the big one for me, one of them was
at the same time,
mandatory detention time. Well, hell, as an employee driver, absolutely you should get paid for that time. And I'd be all for supporting anything that... Now, you can't put it on the shippers, though. There's a gazillion shippers in the country. How do you ever enforce this? You got to come up... It has to happen at the carrier side.
Who's going to enforce it anyway?
You can't. It's impossible. So why even try? Why write another law that the government won't enforce, just like thousands we already have? But you can enforce it on the carrier side. And I'm not big on regulation, but that's one I can at least understand. But I take a 180-degree approach to any organization trying to force my customers to do it. That's my job. Had I been a member, I would have canceled it in a heartbeat over that one issue alone.
Yep. Right. I've got to go and do a drug test. So
all right.
I've got to go.
All right. Did you study?
Have a good one. Nah.
Uh-oh.
I just wing it.
Okay. Good luck. We'll talk to you soon. Let's go to Texas. And we've got phone lines open, by the way, and this is our last call. So I'll either be wrapping it up after this call, or we'll take yours if you jump in here. Tony, good morning.
Morning. Good eye, Mike. Morning, sir. I was calling you at the show. Sorry I didn't make it. I blundered the week. We're having soot problems, and today she derated me. So I was sitting there in Texas calling you for advice. Two choices on this PACCAR with 950 some odd thousand miles. He has a new Peterbilt 263 gears for 180. And so I was going to, almost do that. So I do a little bit of looking. There is a Volvo TC 247 rear axle for 90. I hear you saying buy it now. The Volvo. Any advice?
Is this an April Fool's joke?
It is not.
I have to be
because
careful.
I am
It is
still
April
after
1st.
that Volvo.
It is April 1st.
No, it is not.
So
Yeah,
look,
it is not.
here's how strong my opinion would be about this. I'd rather pay $180 for the Volvo than $90 for the Pack car.
All right.
Does that
Yeah, all
kind of
right.
make it clear
Yeah.
how I feel?
Yeah, it pretty much does.
Yeah,
if
but
I
the
had
good
a
news
dime
is
for every car hauler that
the
runs in,
really, really good news is you only have to pay $90 for the Volvo.
so I don't have to worry about interest. I'll save that in fuel. I don't have to worry about down payment. I don't even have to ask you or Bruce about the catalyst causing my soot problems that derated me today. But it clears when you drive the truck. How does it get soot just when you shut it off and park? Anyway,
Well, now
either way.
one of the things that can happen that will increase the soot the more often you turn the vehicle off and let it sit is a leaking injector. An injector that will drip into the cylinder while it's sitting there. And then when you fire it up,
Well, now-
there's no way it can burn all of that raw fuel sitting in there. So you get a tremendous amount of soot on startup. The clue there should be we would have fuel dilution on an oil sample.
Let me ask you this. Now that you mentioned that, I am getting hesitation. When I first start out
That
the truck,
could be an injector.
Aha. All right. I think I'm ready to trade her. What do you think?
Oh, I'll come down and help you.
Yeah. Okay. On the car hauler thing, it's not Paul. Hope it's not Mark. IG Transport was the one. If I had a dime for every car hauler, remember you mentioned that there was a magnet attached to your coach and they kept drifting into your lane. Every time I go in Mariana on the Panhandle eastbound, a car hauler rammed my mirrors, and this time he hit it forwards. It's not Paul, but yeah.
Yeah, that's way too close. When we make contact, that's too close.
Now, honestly, this is sad, but I have a feeling they're listening to this program.
Really?
Because Paul's brought in a lot of car haulers, and I just how friendly Paul is. I just think that every car hauler is a friend of Paul.
They might
or
be.
They should be.
So just in case they are, stop making contact with us on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, just stop it. That's way too close. What else you got today?
Well, if I wasn't sitting at the receiver, I would have more. I mean, there's tons of stuff. You pretty much cleared it up right there, though. With the all right, was there anything else? Yeah. Damn. So I got an Well, we did. We did blow a heater hose.
Okay.
Again, shutting off the truck and sitting there. So I go to start it up to just bobtail, just to repark it because I was on the curb, and I didn't even start the engine. I turn the key, and I go to look around to see, check around the truck to see where the curb is, check the tires. She starts dumping out. Now, remember, the engine is not turned yet. She starts dumping out all her coolant out the back there.
Really?
Oh, I got out to check the coolant because there was a leak, a slow, cold leak, and it's like someone cut the line, but I know they didn't. She dumped out all her coolant right there on the grass where I park in Frisco, and I had to call out maintenance, and it turned out being and I was really bad to them about this, $1,600, and it took them 3 days. I was late to my appointment and I had to pay a rescheduling fee for a heater hose and a T-junction, $1,600. I thought that was pretty high because he didn't work, 3 hours. Something like $1,200 labor.
The inflation thing is really getting everybody, and this whole the way the news reports this is making me crazy. They say, "Oh, look, inflation went down again this month." No, it didn't. It just didn't go up as much as it did last month. Stop saying it went down. This makes me insane. because they say it month after month after month when every single month inflation continues to get higher. It's just the rate at what it's going up is lower than it was last month. And it is so apparent. Do you order anything from our store? I'm going to put you on the spot. And if not, I'm going to hang up on you. So you might want to lie.
No comment.
Yeah, okay, got it.
No comment.
Good.
I need to order a bunch of stuff.
So if you've never ordered from our store, or if you have ordered from our store, you know, we give out all kinds of cool stickers. Lisa designs these things. I don't know how many designs she's got now, like 30 or whatever. Yeah, and we just randomly grab stickers and throw them in. We put them on the outside of the box. We have fun with them. It's kind of a cool thing. We have kids that collect them now. So Lisa sat down last week or over the weekend and came up with 10 new designs. It was time to put out some new ones. So she put a lot of work into it. She gets done. We've been ordering these things for years. And she goes to place the order. The price has doubled. Now, it's not a huge cost for us, but it's a cost that we don't really get anything directly back. We don't sell. We don't charge for the sticker. We just do it because people like it and it's fun. But we had to look at it and go, you know what? We haven't raised our prices yet. With all this inflation, we keep holding our prices, but I gotta fix things somewhere. So we're either going to give out a lot less stickers, or I don't even know if we're going to order them this time. I don't know if anybody decided, but the inflation thing is really, it's out of control.
Yeah. Well, this will help. Just to put a sock in your argument there. Send me some toothpaste now, and I don't even know how much it costs. That's how hard it is. I don't even have time to go on the website to order all the stuff. I've ordered a bunch of all my oil samples, though. At least has come from you guys, but I have been wanting that toothpaste.
Oh yeah, I need to
for a while. You know how I am with my nutrition. I have my own company, so
that's right.
That's the reason why I'm not spending $1,000 a month with you. That may change, but toothpaste. Yeah, send me some.
Will do. And you might get a sticker. I'm just not sure. We'll send you a free sticker. We'll just charge you twice as much for the toothpaste.
Yes, sir.
Just kidding.
Thanks a lot, big guy.
We're still holding our price down. All right. Talk to you soon. I'm not sure how much longer we can do that, though. Seriously. We have certain margins. When we bring a product in, we need to hit a certain margin. And we no longer hit our margins on almost any of our products because we have to pay more for almost everything. We've been trying to hold down changing our prices. Let's go to Texas. Tom, welcome.
Hey, Kevin, nice to have you back. I wanted to make a comment about inflation and basically any home improvements at all. So I was, of course, in Miami where the water heater goes out in the house in Nevada. So I make a couple calls, call around. I look online on Home Depot has a water heater for like $400 and I want to say like $39. Still a 40-gallon water heater. one level house, you know. So I call around, and the guy's going to go out and take a look. I'm 30 miles outside of Las Vegas. So he said, well, I'll have to charge you $180 to go out there, you know. So, okay, all right, go out there, pay him $180. He gets out there. I talk him down to $2,100 for a water heater. It's an electric water heater, Kevin. It's an electric water heater, right?
Is it a hybrid? I just got a big education on water heaters.
No,
it's not a hybrid.
It was a flipping water heater.
No, I know, but
water. Yeah.
The electric water heaters now, there's actually something called a hybrid now.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I just had a huge lesson on this because we've been through so many configurations of water heaters in this place that I am now the expert. And the reason was when we bought the house, it was 3,000 square feet, and we had two big water heaters. They really made sure you were never going to run out of water. We had, I think, 260 gallons, one for the ground floor and one for the third floor. Ground floor and basement, one for the third floor. So you never ran out of hot water. When we added on to the house, by the time we were done, we had 4,000 square feet of concrete floors with in-floor heating, water flowing through the concrete in tubes. And some of our rooms are like 19-foot ceilings. Now, this is our only heat. There's no forced air. There's no gas, no electric. It's the in-floor heating. And I said, how is that going to heat this big space? And they said, you just wait. They were correct. It is incredible. I will never have any other kind of heating again. I love it, everything about it. And it works. Keeps those rooms as toasty warm as you want them to be. But the first guy that put the system in he was just incompetent. And he made a mess of the system. We had 2 tanks that were there plus 1 on demand. And he had it wired or plumbed so complicated it was a mess. One of the tanks started leaking, so I said, what would happen if we just took it out? Why do we even need 2 tanks now that we have an on-demand? So we took it out, and it worked, but we had to plumb it a different way, and then that got confusing. And to make matters worse, the house has 2 basements, and in the one basement were the original hot water heaters. Over in another basement was where the on-demand is, so when all the pipes have to go through the walls, it's almost impossible to figure out what's plumbed to what. So then the other water heater sprung a leak. And I said, all right, let's just get everything out of the original basement and move the entire system over to the new basement. And I hired a really reputable, good company to come out and do it. I had been using these, little independent guys, and everybody kept screwing something up. And one thing, one person would add on one way, and then somebody else would modify it. Nobody knew how the system even worked anymore. So this company came in, looked at everything, and said, wow, this is kind of a challenge with all this concrete plus, 6,000 plus square feet, high ceilings. They came up with leave the on-demand we had in there, and we already had to replace it once because I think we were overworking it. So we've already got a new on-demand in within like 5 years. And then they put in a new tank, and it was a hybrid. And I said, what do you mean a hybrid, like propane and electric? And they said, no, straight electric and a heat pump. So the water heater actually uses a heat pump. And so when it was in this small utility room and it was running so hard to try to keep up with these floors, I am not exaggerating. It would be like 36 degrees inside that room because that's how heat pumps work. They take the heat out of the air and use it to heat up.
Exchange it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a heat exchanger almost. You're right. So you'd go in there. It was like an ice box in that room. It was so cold. And it couldn't keep up.
Wow.
So, and this was like a $16,000 job. It was a big job to replumb it all and do all that. But I just finally wanted it right, all in one place where I could understand where all the water was flowing so I can fix it if something goes wrong. And we called the company. We said, hey, look, none of our rooms are getting up to temperature. We're about 4 or 5 degrees short, and this thing is running constantly. And they came back out and they said, you know what? We talked to the manufacturer. We had to take their advice. We screwed up. So they took the tank out and put in another on-demand. So now we have one on-demand running showers and sinks and all that, and one on-demand, and those are both propane, that runs the floors, and it is by far the best setup we've ever had. But the hybrid...
What does that do for your propane consumption?
The cool thing is in the winter time, we'll use quite a bit to keep that much airspace and concrete warm, but that's all right. It's less than what we were spending on electric and propane, so it was actually...
and you're right by the dam.
Right. So we actually sell our own electric in town here. When I was on city council, that was a big part of what we had to do.
What was, you don't know what it is, a kilowatt, do you? Kilowatt, like
I used to know all that,
Cost
but it's changed since I've been on
Right.
city council. It's not as cheap as you would think, being that the dam is right there, and we run it all in the city. We hire the linemen. We do everything. We do all the billing in the city. You would think it would be cheaper. It was just about the same price as everybody else in Oregon and Washington around us. So,
So how many gallons of propane do you go through in the winter then? Come on.
I don't know. We have a 1,000-gallon buried tank, and they just stop by and top it off. So I have no idea. I don't pay attention to it. I mean, it's just always there. Once in a while, I see the truck pull up and they fill it up, and that's all I know. And they never let it get empty, so I don't. Lisa pays all the bills. But look. You're never going to have a house of this size, and it's always going to be expensive. The good news is in the summertime, our propane use goes to almost nothing because it's just one hot water heater for 2 people, and the on-demands are pretty efficient.
They are pretty efficient. But I was seriously, so I got that guy down to. I said, okay, so if you have a water heater sitting right next to this water heater, because I'm in Miami, right?
Right.
I said, how much were you going to charge me to hook up that? Because the girlfriend can't do it.
Right. Right.
Well, I mean, anybody else could do it. I could teach a monkey how to do it with 6 bananas. You know what I mean? But she can't do it. So he said, well, if you don't want a warranty, I'll do it for $500. And he sounded like he was just doing me the biggest favor in the whole world. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, bro. I go, well, it looks like it's going to take me 10 days to get back. Looks like the old lady's taking cold shower.
You know,
here's good for you.
Here's the thing. I know we get frustrated with these companies and people, and I try not to. It's not them. I mean, the price of everything keeps going up, and it's our government. You can't keep printing and spending money and sending it to Ukraine and paying for all these illegals coming across the border. You can't keep doing that as a government, not wreck an economy, and that's what they're doing.
And we talked about this 6 years ago, and we were trying to figure out what they were thinking,
I know.
like you're saying, the one explanation that's the simplest is run with it, and they're just trying to change this country and wreck it.
Yeah.
And I listened to RFK the other day, and I like a lot of what he has to say.
I do too.
I got to get, you know what I mean, but
I do
I
too.
voted for Perot back in the day, and it just screwed up the whole election. Now that I'm more educated when it comes to politics, and we always say this is our last chance, but people have to realize that this is our last chance. But we have to get the House and the Senate too.
You know what I'm hoping for in this election? Not in the House and Senate, because that won't matter, but on the presidential side, I'm actually hoping with somebody as powerful as RFK. I think his vice president choice was a little odd. Not really sure
what she has the money.
Yeah, I get that, but she has no recognition. She has no history. How do you get excited about it? And I know it's vice president. They don't do a whole lot anyway, but I wish he would have picked a really powerful, even new, Vivek. Not that he probably would have accepted. I don't know, but and here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that it's finally enough of a shift that in Oregon my vote will actually count, and it might be.
Yeah. But not for RFK. Your vote will count
for Trump.
If you go with anything, but for Trump.
For Trump, I'll just say it. If I'm voting this time. Is everybody I think knows my opinion and what I think about Trump. I've been honest about it from the start. I didn't have to vote for him the other 2 times because it wouldn't have mattered anyway. And that is the absolute fact. There was no way it could have mattered in Oregon. Now I'm actually hoping that RFK is a big enough game changer in this that my vote might count this time.
Yeah, and in Oregon, if it wasn't for Jasper, downtown Portland, Eugene,
Salem.
the rest of Salem's not as liberal as you think it is, but the rest of Oregon is redder than red. I mean, it is very, very conservative. All there are farmers, but there's no votes out there.
We're only 45 miles from downtown Portland, and then Hood River is 65 miles. You know, one of my really good friends, he used to live right across the street from me. I took over his city council seat because he moved to Hood River. And I took over his city council seat. There was a runoff. I did get elected to do it, but that was the only reason I did it. He came over and said, hey, we don't need one less conservative on the council. Will you finish out my term if you can get elected? And I said, sure. So that's how I ended up doing it. He moved to Hood River. He's now a state representative, and he's pretty darn conservative. So just this close to Portland, there's still quite a bit of it's not quite so crazy left.
No, I was in Lake Oswego. We were 12 miles out. I mean, we bordered Portland.
Oh, yeah.
The city basically bordered Portland.
You're a suburb, right?
It was all conservative. It was, I mean, there was a couple of the crazy, goofy liberal teachers, you know what I mean, that got lucky.
There's also a lot of money there.
Everything got crazy. Oh, there's a ton of money there.
There's a lot of money in Lake Oswego, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the house that we bought, or my brother bought for my dad in the early 90s for like $360,000, recently sold for $6.1 million. It was on the canal. You know what I mean?
Wow, yeah.
But they did a lot of work to it after you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was a little bit of a shitter too. Anyway, you know, but prices going up everywhere. But it really got me thinking. Anybody that's stupid enough, now you're not stupid enough, but if you don't go into the military and get your college paid for, a percentage of it anyway, and go and take the debt.
I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one, and I put my time into the military, but I actually talked my son out of it. I couldn't do it.
Right.
The military has gone way, way, way too woke, and they have too much control over you. I wouldn't do it again. I hate to say that, but I would not do it again.
No, but at the same token, we can't just let them have the military.
Well, somebody better figure out how to get it back, because they're not. I would just look at it and go, look, it's not like a job that when it gets really bad, I just quit. I'm committed, and I look at what they're doing and think there's no way I would give those nut jobs that much control over my life. Sorry, it's not going to happen. And here's the thing.
They have that much control
Here's what
over
else.
their
Well, that's what I mean, and I would never allow that. I mean, I'm not signing up for that.
Yeah.
There's no way. And here's the other way I look at it. We just need to stop fighting wars all over the world anyway. We're not the world's police. I will do whatever I have to do to defend the homeland to this day, but I don't. You're not shipping me all over the world with a bunch of generals in dresses. It's not going to happen.
Well, what do we defend the homeland? Did you have you noticed the southern border at all?
Well,
I mean,
it's not like we can.
This is going to end ugly.
Yeah, it is, but it's not
ugly.
like we can go down and shoot them. I mean, right now we have to depend on our government, but at some point, when it comes to my front door, then I'm certainly ready.
Yeah, and it won't be too awful long before, not your front door necessarily, not my front door, but it won't be long until people realize. I mean, it takes 3-4 years for this to manifest itself, and the sleeper cells that Hamas has over here.
It's manifesting itself already. Look at the crime. I mean, the big cities are just awful.
I know it, but it's not going to get any better because it's not being stopped.
No, it's getting worse.
And at what point does the governor of Texas, who should have done this 4 years ago when it first started, what he's trying to do, and I guess it's tomorrow or the next day where that Louisiana, the circuit court already ruled on
You know what
Texas can enforce their borders.
You know what I think the problem is? I think the problem is that the people who know what is right and what we should be doing are also reasonable enough that we try not to take overly drastic actions. And at some point, I think that has to stop. But I think that's what's going on. I think we look at it and go, well, wait a minute. You know, is it worse if we decide we're the dictators and we're going to say how things go? We're supposed to follow, our government works in a certain way. And the left has just thrown all the rules out the window. They do whatever the hell they want. And we're still stuck in that mindset of there's a right way to do this, and we keep trying to do it the right way.
Well, look at Biden was forgiving the student loans. The Supreme Court said you can't do that.
He's still doing it.
And then he's still doing it. Right.
That's just breaking the law. That makes me absolutely insane.
Preaching to the choir.
I know.
You're preaching to the choir. And then at what point does the governor of Texas or Florida say, no, we're not going to abide by some crazy ass judge on some certain court because he's a federal judge, because they cherry pick them, you know.
Oh, they've been doing that for years.
Say no.
I know.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom,
the whole thing has to change.
Got to cut you loose. So much to talk about. I've got another call. If you want to jump in and join us, I've got about 10 more minutes. I did only set up a 2-hour show today. I didn't think I'd be able to talk for the full 2 hours. And I feel a cough right on the edge. Let's go to New York. Ennis, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin. Hope you're feeling better.
Getting there. Certainly not 100%, but way better than I was.
Yeah, so I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, great to have you here.
Me and my wife met you at the truck show on, I think it was the Thursday. So you were by Joel's Volvo there, so I've listened to you guys forever and stuff.
Now I remember.
And I had a great conversation with Joel talking about that Volvo. He's got that purple haze.
Yeah.
And one thing I didn't really notice, you know, I've heard him talk about it being the 6x2.
Right.
But I never really put much thought into his front axle. I got looking at his tires on that. He's got I don't remember the size of them, but they're not your standard on a 6x4.
Right.
And he said he can have something like 16,000 pounds or something on that front axle.
Yeah, he's.
And I've been following him on Facebook. He's got the new Blueberry truck, that blue one now.
I know. I just saw that this morning. Yeah.
And I remember him talking about Purple Haze, how he can have his trailer so far forward there so there ain't much of a gap.
Mm-hmm.
And now with a 6x4, it's more of like a traditional fleet spec. So his mileage was a little bit off.
You know, Joel has managed to maximize that configuration. So, you know, by having that heavy front axle, he can shift the trailer up more. By having the liftable or the weight biased dead axle, he cuts rolling resistance and mechanical resistance way down. So that's a multi-factor fuel economy improvement there, and it'll be interesting to see that now this can get really confusing. The new truck has aerodynamic improvements, it has other mechanical improvements, but he's giving up all the advantages of the 6x2 and that heavy front axle. So if it turns out to be that these things get really close to the same fuel economy, then if you understand it, it would tell us that there's potential to really improve fuel economy again. Keep all the advantages of the new truck, go to his weight-biased 6x2, and we would get all the advantages. So it's just, there's so many ways to do this and so many ways to look at it.
Yeah, I just find it so fascinating because, I mean, I guess I can say it because you're not on Sirius XM anymore, but I'm a company driver. I've always been a company driver. I've been driving probably 14 years now, but I currently drive for Walmart. I've been with them about 6 years now.
Good.
And Walmart's all they talk about. I love it here, but I mean, all they talk about is fuel efficiency.
Right.
But yeah, their idea of fuel efficiency, and then I listen to you every day when you're on. It's like the truck I'm in right now, they buy these brand new Freightliner Cascadias, and then as soon as the drive tires run out, what do they throw on them? Recaps.
Yep. Hey, so
and
there is another factor.
Like I'm talking
here.
to Joel.
There's a big factor here, and a lot of people just either don't think about this or don't understand it. Walmart's not a trucking company. Walmart doesn't generate
they're
profit.
A retail company that owns.
Right. For them, trucks are not a revenue generator. They are an expense reducer. It's the exact opposite. They have trucks because it would cost them a ton of money to try to move all their freight if they didn't have trucks. But their trucks don't generate any revenue. It is 180 degrees different from a trucking company, and Walmart's pretty smart business company. They don't make a whole lot of mistakes. It's why they can sell things so stupid cheap and grow all over the world. But it's a whole different mindset on how you operate those trucks. And honestly, I don't completely understand it because that's not my market.
Yeah. I know a couple times a year we always have our safety meetings, and like our GTM will come in and pull up the P&L statement for our particular office, and they've got every single cost right down to the penny.
Yeah.
And I mean, they can run us even with what they're paying us per mile. I mean, it's like stupid money they pay us to drive.
Because they can. Because they can. They generate their revenue on every product they sell. A trucking company only generates revenue on the freight it moves.
But, I mean, they talk about how much the fuel's costing them. Like our fleet out of Marcy, New York's at like 7.6, 7.7 miles per gallon. Their goal is to hit 8.
Well, they're already a full mile per gallon above the trucking industry, and the trucking industry needs every penny of margin it can get. So that's a really telling number, that here's a company that doesn't make money moving freight, doesn't make money with its trucks, and yet it still gets a full mile per gallon better than the entire trucking industry does.
I mean, the big thing that I noticed when I came here 6 years ago, so I came from a small mom and pop that had 9 trucks, and he was running Kenworth T680s with PACCAR motors and the 13-speed double overdrive and 342 rear ends. And when I came here in 2017, every Walmart truck in Marcy, they're running the 264s, direct drives.
Right.
And that was a big thing, which I noticed off the, like you'd say, the acceleration isn't there. But, I mean,
that doesn't necessarily have to be true. Now we're getting down to the...
I know they do have them cut down a little bit more. I think these are 400 horse ED15s in the truck I was
there's
in was
so many
factors,
right? There's so many factors. This gets down to the nuance of what we spend Fridays talking about now. What's the engine architecture? Has the drive line not only been maximized for fuel mileage, but has it been maximized for performance? And they kind of go hand in hand. And it's just all over the board. And, every little decision, like running recaps. Recaps have more rolling resistance. That affects performance. Are they really speccing those trucks to be in the power band as often as possible? Just a lot to it.
And one thing I have noticed, I mean, compared to a lot of the other big, I mean, for as big as Walmart is, I will say, like you said, they're a full mile per gallon above. So these new 2024s they got coming in now. So this truck I'm in now at 65 mile an hour is running like 1375 RPM, and I've heard Joel talk about you really shouldn't be above 1300 with these emission engines.
60 seconds.
And I see these new 2024s. I looked in the door; they're running a little bit higher rear end ratio.
Okay.
And I've driven them because I slip seat, and them at 65, you're at just under 1300.
Nice.
I don't remember the exact ratio it was, but I think so. I mean, they are making improvements there. But like I was talking to, like Joel said, company like Walmart, it comes down to bean counters. You can't take a truck like Purple Haze and make it work for Walmart, but it's like that flow blow system. I can't believe something you can buy from the manufacturer. It's proven it works, and I know Wegmans out in Rochester runs it. They're on their fleet trucks. I mean, and the big thing with Walmart too is we don't do oil changes. I had a TA. It's all done in-house. So how come they aren't running a fleet air filter, something that's proven?
I'll tell you exactly why.
Getting thrown out.
That's it. That is the whole thing right there. No matter how much we can prove to a fleet like that, I would never recommend it. They will lose far more money with filters disappearing than they'll ever make up in savings. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This is, we spend a lot of time on this on Fridays. Big fleets have economies of scale. They can buy things cheaper. They can manage their own shops. They can save a lot of money doing that. And people will say, how can I compete against that? You can't, so stop trying. Do the things they can't do. Yeah. Use fleet air filters. Use the OPS bypass filter. Maximize your fuel economy in a way that a big fleet can never, ever do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the real key is just knowing your operation and knowing how to maximize your operation, not everybody else's. You know, Joel and Henry and Alec and I, we try to know all of this. Between the four of us, we try to know how would we maximize fuel mileage for a fleet that size. We know how. It'd be way, way different than what we do. We like the small side where we can do almost anything we want. When I tried working with fleets on this, I used to think, wow, if I can save, one truck $15,000 a year, my God, all I have to do is find one or two fleets. They don't even have to pay me. I'll just take a percentage of their savings, and I could retire in a couple years. I mean, the math was easy, and I knew I could do it. The problem is, a change that I can make today with a single truck owner-operator takes 1 year to implement at a fleet that size.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, it's just hard. It's just hard for me when I see Joel's numbers running across I-90 on the thruway here in New York at 10-plus miles to gallon. Here I am at 7 point something. Like my brother's an owner-operator, and like he'd say, well, if that's what you want, go buy a truck then. I'm like, well, I'm happy being a company driver, but it just seems like there's room for improvement within the company that ain't ever going to happen. And it's kind of, I'm a company driver, but I tend to try to drive like an owner-operator. I'm not the guy, skidding tires at traffic lights and stuff like that. I tend to...
Yeah. Well, and to be fair,
I grew up on a farm and stuff running equipment, and, Dad taught me how to operate equipment, not abuse it, so.
To be fair again, I 7.6 something out of a fleet that size is incredible. So there's not a lot more they're going to get. You could point at things and say, but if they just do that, well, I'll give you 10 reasons why they can't do that, or it wouldn't be smart to do that. So I've always been pretty impressed with Walmart's commitment to getting better fuel economy.
Yeah. One more topic there. I was noticing, so I listened to you guys' broadcast, was it Friday there with Henry was there? And so you guys... And that, who was that other guest that was there?
Chuck Snow.
Chuck Snow. So he was talking about deregulation, and I've heard you talk about how much better it is now. And my grandfather used to drive truck back in like the late 60s for a few years. He used to haul lumber out of upstate New York, take it down to Brooklyn.
Right.
On a flatbed. And I never met him. He passed away before I was ever born, but my dad remembers riding with him, and he said he took lumber down, and then he had to go back empty because you can't, back then you couldn't pick up, backhaul freight.
Correct.
So when I was walking through, I think it was the West Wing, I stumbled across a booth. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I had to do a double take, and I'm like, I thought I've heard you talk about it before. You tried to comment on social media and they'll just block you. Is it that NOOA National? What is it? National Owner?
That's them.
So of course, as me being a company driver, it doesn't mean nothing to me. But I grabbed their flyers. I did a circle back around, and I grabbed the flyer because I was just wanted to see what they were all about. It's like I don't. Are they? It said developed like 2 years ago or something, like 2021, and it says they got like 35,000 people.
Well, here's what they have.
Are there that many people that are that
well, hold on.
ignorant of the fact? Because it says
on.
right on their flyer they
Let me
want to
explain.
amend that.
Let me explain their numbers. That is not 35,000 dues-paying members. That's 35,000 people that joined a free Facebook group. There is a huge difference. If people believe in something, they will put their money up. If all they have to do,
they wouldn't have been in a 10 by 10 booth if they had 35,000 members. Is what I was thinking too.
Correct.
They would have had a tractor trailer like Oida sitting out there in the lot.
Yeah, 35,000 dues-paying members would be impressive. But 35,000 people that all they had to do was click one button on social media. Now, here's something else you can go figure out. Even with 35,000 members in their free Facebook group, they have very, very little activity. I mean, look at their posts and their responses. This stuff is so obvious, and it's just misleading to claim that you have 35,000 members as an organization. To me, you're not a member of an organization unless you pay.
And they had that printed right on their flyer they gave me. That was like the first thing I read. But I'm reading down through their objectives, and one of their objectives was to amend the
Motor Carrier Act of 1981.
Clause.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
It's like I've heard you talk about, and it's like,
we're not going back to we shouldn't, but obviously there's a group of people that want it to. It's not going to happen. It's the same idea that if we get enough drivers together, we could shut down the whole country. Well, yes, you could. There's no doubt about that, but it's never worked. It's never going to work. So why do you keep talking about it? Why do you keep talking about things that aren't going to happen? Nobody in this country is going to go back to a socialistic model of business. And that's what financial regulation was. It was the government picking winners and losers. It was the government controlling the rates in a free market economy. We are never going back to that, and we shouldn't.
You know, and to me, it just doesn't even seem efficient to begin with.
It's not. It was never meant to be efficient. It was meant to protect the companies that were in trucking at the time. It was meant to protect them from too much competition because we had to build out a big enough trucking network to cover the country. And the plan was always to eventually deregulate that industry. I don't know that I even agreed with regulating it in the first place, but it made some sense back then. But we were, and look, it was a Democrat that did it. It was Carter. I mean, any president at the time was going to do it because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, to even think about in 2024 wanting to go back to that just seems anti-American to me.
It is you're right. That is the best way to put it. It's just anti-American. We don't do business that way. We don't let the government make our financial decisions in business, and we shouldn't.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it was nice meeting you, Kevin. My wife really loves Destination Health. We stayed at the Crown Plaza, so that we could literally just walk across the road because we drove down in our car.
Yeah.
And I told her, I'm mixing up a batch of fresh yogurt right before we leave on Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
Brought that down in a cooler with some ice and stuff.
Yeah.
That was pretty nice because that's the problem with them shows. They're really typically,
Oh, the food can be awful.
Fried chicken. It's just,
the good news at that show are the pork chops.
Yeah.
You can always get by on and they're really good pork chops too, by the way. I miss the yogurt. I haven't made a batch in quite a while. I got to get back to that because I'm really missing it. But it was good meeting you there.
That was a nice treat.
And tell your wife that Wednesday is going to be a good Destination Health Day. I have some new information.
Good deal. I'll let her know. All right. Hope you feel better, Kevin.
All right. Thanks. Good talking to you.
Yep.
All right. We are going to wrap this up. I am all out of time. We will see you back here tomorrow for the Power Hour. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.